Today I'm going to be going through and I am repainting this table. And so first I have to get the rest of the clutter off of this table. And so that's what I'm doing right now. Now, if you've been following my journey, you'll see that this is definitely out of order because I have got a lot of stuff actually cleared off of the floor. All of those big piles in the previous videos are gone now. And I will go ahead and have videos come out where I show those piles. And so if you're still interested in that kind of process, then definitely watch for that because those are coming very soon. But for this video, I just finished this table and I'm just very excited about it. And I just really want to show you what I did with this. I'm almost done. I have the final boom clamp that goes over my cutting mat. And then I'll have that cutting mat as well that I will have to set aside. And then I will be ready to clean up this table and go ahead and sand it, because whenever you paint, it's always a good idea to do some sanding before you get painting. Now that I've done the sanding, I'm getting out some tack cloth, and that's just a better thing to use than trying to use a paper towel that you either spray or get wet. Tack cloths, it's actually got like a little bit of lacquer in it, and it's lacquer that's not going to mess up anything with a water-based paint like what I'm using here, and so it's perfectly fine that way. But it's just really effective. It's kind of got this tackiness, so that's why they call it a tack cloth, and it just makes it so it really picks up all of that fine sanding dust, gets it out of the way, and makes it so that the table is going to have the paint and not have any weird grittiness to it. It'll be real nice and smooth. And then for this table, this is something that I was able to get just the tester paint. And so I got this color cracked pepper. And the funny thing about this was I had no idea that this was a very popular color. They told me at the Home Depot, and this is the Bear brand cracked pepper, they told me there that this was the most popular color that they mixed last year in 2025. And there was actually somebody right after me that was also getting this particular paint color mixed up for them. So that was just kind of a happy coincidence. I had no idea that the color I picked was that popular. But it is a nice color. It's this dark gray. And I'm really pleased with how it went. And I'm going to have to put on 2 coats of this. So here we are. Here is the first coat. You can still really see that plaid that I painted on there, but I'm planning on doing a second coat. I am looking for good enough and done as opposed to perfect. So far everything is working out real nice. And I have a certain little somebody who is waiting for Mother to leave the room so that he can jump up on the table. And so that is not going to happen. I am going to button everything up and let everything dry so that it is not molested by a cat. so I have this table pretty much done the way that I want to have this thing remodeled. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some features of this table, and maybe that will give you some pretty cool ideas of what you might be able to do for a work table in your space. So this table is a pretty large table. What this table is it's just a door. So when we moved into this place a few years ago, the previous homeowner had some doors that they had taken off and decided to put other doors on, some fancier doors onto some bedrooms, I think. And so we had like, I don't know, 2 or 3 of these hollow core doors just kind of sitting in the garage. And so I figured, well, this is the perfect kind of a work table. And so I went ahead and I took the door here. It was painted. At first, I got out paint stripper and I was doing some of that. And then as I was going along with that with my paint scraper, I realized that this door had originally been lacquered and had not been properly sanded before they had decided to paint it white. And so I was able to remove the rest of it with just a paint scraper. So that was like the first thing I did. I did a whole bunch of sanding, did that to both sides of the door. And the sides, I didn't really care that much about. Quite frankly, the sides were kind of unfinished anyway, so it didn't matter. And then one of the things that I did, and this is something that I absolutely love, it is such a game changer for this table, is I put these old yardsticks and I put them all around. So if you'll see here what I've done, and hopefully the light level is enough to be able to see it. I have a yardstick here, and then I actually cut it right on the 30 and then started the other yardstick. And then that one goes all the way to the 30 and then all the way to the end here to just past the 18, because most of these doors are basically about 78 inches. And what this is useful for is for whenever I'm measuring things that are longer than my cutting mat. And this was something that I had been wanting to do for a long time, and I just didn't really know how to do it. And then I saw these yardsticks at kind of this sort of thrift outlet, and they get these old yardsticks in from whenever these lumber businesses go out of business. I think this one was actually probably a carpet business that went out of business. Yeah, it says Carpets to Go. And I love this one because it said it was Remnant World. And so if you're into sewing, you know all about remnants. And so I felt like that was just totally appropriate for what I was doing here. And they come from all different places. Like this one is Colorado Springs. And I have a Sutherland. So anybody that remembers the Sutherlands. And that one doesn't say where it's from. But we have Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And my dad lives in South Dakota, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then this one, I thought this was cool because it said Old Masters on it. And I was like, oh, okay, I like that. So I like what some of these say. So when I brought all these yardsticks home, and they were only like, I think about 30 cents a piece. So that is one of those things I think is cool. And I basically just fastened them with drive screws. I can't remember if I actually glued these and then did the drive screws, but that was something that I did that I think is a pretty cool feature and a really nice transformation with this door. I was able to cover up a side thing that, usually is kind of an unattractive, unfinished part of a door over here. And so on each side, what I've done is instead of trying to put legs on, and this is really one of the only things I bought, I basically bought these 2 units, and so it's kind of a 1x3 cubby. And at this point, I can't remember for sure where I got this. I can't remember if I got it at Walmart or Fred Meyer. But I have these, and then I have them fastened with these brackets I got at Home Depot. And so basically, I spent money on the yardsticks, so that was cheap, 30 cents a pop. And then these brackets, and then the actual shelving units here. And so it kind of acts as sort of a storage, but it also keeps the table supported. I also spent money on paint. And really, that's the only thing that I spent money on when it comes to this table. So this table was a great upcycle. It was actually very inexpensive, and it just works wonderfully well. Before we lived here, I had to work off of a dining table in this little kind of dining nook that we had, and it was very small. The dining table was probably about 2/3 the size of this door at the very, very most. My big cutting mat here took up most of the space, and you can even, for fun, go all the way back into my earliest videos, and you're going to see this cutting mat, and you might see the tripod legs on top of the cutting mat because that was how I rolled back then. And then what I did about the doorknob insert is, this was actually free, but you can get these on Amazon, and what they're called is they're called desk grommets. And so what it's used for is it's used as a way of getting like all your computer cords and whatever other cords on your desk and basically just putting it through there. But it fits perfectly in that doorknob hole. So it fits absolutely perfectly in that doorknob hole. And then this bag was just an equipment bag, and it had like this ribbon that was sewn to it. I looked at the size of that and I thought, that's kind of perfect. And so what I can do is I can just push it right down in there, and I can put my grommet right there, and then I can just kind of pull on it until I get it pretty much sucked around that grommet. And then that way it's a pretty nice low profile type of a thing. And then what I do with this is I put all my little thread snip trimmings. And so, anytime you're doing sewing, you end up with a lot of little thread snip trimmings. Even if you chain piece, you still end up with a certain amount of that. And so that's one of the things. And then underneath, this isn't really actually supporting this. This is a Rubbermaid unit that we had. It's a drawer unit. And then these little things here, I haven't glued them to either the Rubbermaid or the table, but they almost fit perfectly there. And these I just glued to each other, and they're just the styrofoam that came with those shelving units in the box. But, it kind of works so that, just in case there's ever any kind of a failure in the center of this table, which hasn't happened yet in the last 3.5 years, but just in case that ever happened, then there's a little bit of something there, I guess, to kind of prevent a total failure. And, I don't know, these are just weird things I kind of think about. I'm kind of one of those types that's sort of like an over-improver type, I guess. And then in these drawers, I decided that I was going to put my thread cones. And so the top one has thread cones, and then I have like some specialty cones there I'm not sure what to do with. Here's kind of a specialty small cone. But for the most part, these are the actual thread cones. And then I have some wash away, or maybe that's that might be the monofilament. So it's one of those specialty ones that Superior puts out. And then in here, I have serger cones, and then I'm wanting to get another 2-pack of this from Walmart. And then that way I can just kind of tame this zone where I've got bobbins and I've got my stick pins, and this has got the binding clips. So I just want to kind of corral all that stuff in there. And then the bottom shelf here, I'm not completely committed to this. This is actually a bin from the Dollar Tree. And so it's kind of a nice little snap bin. And they fit absolutely perfectly in here. And it looks like I could probably get 2 of them in there. But I just have that. This has embroidery floss and Sashiko thread. And then I have my interfacing, and I have Misty Fuse and Wonder Web. Wonder Web is the Pellin knockoff of Misty Fuse. So I have that in there. I felt like that made sense. And then I also have this Wonder Tape that I occasionally use. I have my skateboard tape just in case I need to put something like that onto a ruler. And then I have my knee lifter that I'm always kind of losing. So I figured if I put it in one of these drawers, then that would kind of keep track of it. And so there we go. That's the table. And it's still kind of a work in progress for me to get things cleaned around it, obviously. I have a couple of trash bags there. And then over here, I have some scrap bins that have been sitting there forever. So eventually I'll be figuring out what I'm doing with that to give it a home. So that's what I've done with that table. I hope I've given you some inspiration there. And I tell you, it just looks so much better now that I have a nice, even paint color on it. My original thinking when I had that plaid was I had measured that out to, I think, 2-inch and 3-inch increments, something like that. So I had like 2-inch and 3-inch increments, I think. And I was thinking that that was going to help me with measuring fabric. But turns out that the yardsticks are way better. I might have discovered the yardsticks while I was kind of shopping around, getting acquainted with the new town that we had moved to. And so I might have discovered those yardsticks after I had decided to do that weird little plaid paint job. But it just looks so much better. I feel like the room actually looks like bigger somehow with this darker gray paint job on the tabletop. So I am very excited to use this. I decided to move my iron over to the other side because I do have an additional boom for filming, and I've been placing the boom on the other side. And it's really irritating trying to go across. I was doing that because before, whenever I would film whatever I was pressing, I would use my little tabletop tripod that this camera is sitting on right now, and I'd be angling it down that way. And so that just wasn't conducive to having this sitting to the right because the whole apparatus would have been blocking what I would be trying to show as pressing. So I'm definitely getting some things a lot more settled out to where I think it's going to work really well. I think I'm going to be able to be pretty efficient. And for the little bits where I've had to kind of pause for a few days and put a different video out, because I had like a few block videos I did earlier, and that was in the middle of all of this stuff, it has been a lot more efficient. I've been able to curate my fabric a lot easier. And so with this added step of getting this table all nice and just repainted, which originally I was not going to do, but I just kind of had a wild hair driving home and thought about what if I repainted the table, and decided to set about doing that, and I am so glad I did. So I hope that I have been able to give you some interesting inspiration, and at the very least, hopefully what I've done in here has been interesting for you to watch. And I hope to see you on the next video for what I'm doing on this journey. Thanks for watching.